is an iHeart podcast.
Hey everyone, it's Sophia, and welcome back to this week's Work in Progress. Today's guest is an actor, a producer, a mental health activist, and even a superhero when she's on set. You know her best as Kara Danvers, aka Supergirl on the CW. It's Melissa Benoist. Melissa was always attracted to acting and performing and has described herself as a theater kid at heart. She's been acting in movies and television since 2008 and had her Broadway musical debut in 2018's Beautiful. Melissa's husband, Chris Wood, is a founder of the I Don't Mind mental health awareness campaign, a cause which Melissa has vociferously supported. Melissa has also spoken out about her own experience as a survivor of domestic abuse and has established herself as a voice and encouraging force for domestic abuse victims everywhere. More recently, Melissa has added novelist to her ever-growing list of accomplishments. She co-wrote her book, The Powers, Haven's Secret, with her sister, Jessica Benoist, and best-selling author, Mariko Tamaki. I'll be asking Melissa about the book, about being a superhero, and about her experience with mental health as both an individual and an advocate. I am incredibly impressed by Melissa's courage, her poise, and the way that she looks at the world, and I think you will be too. Without further ado, welcome Melissa Benoist. I'm so excited to jump in with you today. You know, before we started the show and we were sitting here on Zoom, you know, you and I were sharing that it feels like everyone we've ever met tells us we're supposed to be friends. So yes. I'm so excited to finally.
So many people have told me that.
Yeah, I'm so jazzed to finally hang and honestly to talk about work and career and balance and mental health and all the things. But before we jump into where we are today, I really like to go back with people. Mm-hmm. You know, it's easy to Google a person or do research and find out what they're up to and, you know, the things that they've been in. But I'm always really curious if the people who come on the show, for whatever it is they're known for, would look back at their childhoods and say, oh, I was the same, or oh, I was very different. You know, was Melissa at 8 or 9 or 10 similar to the Melissa the world knows now?
Similar, yes. And even, I'd say, I don't even know how to describe it. I would say even more vivacious. I think I was less, you know, before the world knocked me down a couple times and you know, you get chewed up every now and then in your adult life. But I think before that stuff happened, when I think about my childhood, I just remember feeling fearless to be myself. And that's a feeling I miss. When I look back on 8, 9, 10-year-old Melissa, I just remember being really weird and knowing people thought that I was weird and not caring in the slightest. And just loving what I loved and really in an unashamed way. And I was really hyper and had a ton of energy and just always had fun. Just was always wanting to run around and have fun and act crazy.
Yeah. When you think about liking what you liked without, you know, any shame or fear of judgment, what sticks out to you? What were you really into?
It was always theater from a very young age, definitely doing theater. And I did children's theater and dinner theater and like kids shows. Like I played a puzzle piece once and literally had to wear like a massive 6-foot foam. I was like sandwiched in between these two pieces of foam and I was a singing puzzle piece. And it was the theater. It was the books that I read. I was a huge Harry Potter nerd to the point where I would wear like Harry Potter shirts to school before the movies came out. And I had a Hedwig stuffed animal. I was really innocent. I believed in Santa Claus until I was 12, which is arguably way too old. But I think it was my imagination, and I loved playing in my imagination and really kind of diving into that and playing with Barbies and dolls with my little sister until I was older. I really was unashamed and didn't fear judgment in those kind of things.
It's interesting for me now when I think about myself at that age. So much of what you're saying rings really true for me. I can feel part of my insides going, yep, yes, me too. Just raising my hand over and over again. And it's wild now looking at the young people in my life and the kids in my life. And I want them to be able to be kids for as long as possible. And so I love that. I love hearing that you held on to your child things for perhaps a little longer. Because once they're gone, they're just gone.
Yeah.
I think that that's very cool. I know that you were born in Texas, though you were mostly raised in Colorado. So do you consider yourself a Texan or a Colorado human?
I feel like a Coloradan girl through and through. And I loved growing up there. Have you been?
Yeah. Yeah, a lot.
It's the best.
It's magic. It's absolute magic. I love it there.
Yeah. It's a beautiful place, and it was a really great place to grow up for me. I think it's really changed in the last 20 years, and I don't get back up as often as I'd like. But growing up there, I don't want to say it's like real okey doke. It was just the perfect place to harbor that innocence. And the people are really kind, and everyone's really outdoorsy, and that was also a massive part of my life that I've carried into adulthood. And exploring national parks and just like immersing yourself in nature was a massive part of my upbringing. So that's why I think I feel like a Colorado girl.
Yeah. There's kind of a parallel energy, interestingly enough, that I find between Colorado and California.
Totally.
I'm from Los Angeles, and people are always so shocked by that here. And it's interesting because being from here, there was much more of the kind of experience that you're referring to, always being outside, always being in national parks, road tripping to the desert, going up to the redwoods, being in the ocean, going to the Sierras. I had a very natural barefoot outdoors, childhood. And so many of the people I think who move to Los Angeles move here for industry, for jobs, they come here and they just work. But when you're from here, it's the nature, it's the, small farm towns in California, that I feel as much connected to, if not more so than, Sunset Boulevard.
Completely. And I've discovered that too. I'll be honest, when I first moved to LA, it was not my favorite place. And it wasn't until I discovered what you're talking about. And it was sort of like, well, duh, how did I not know that I could drive 5 hours and go see Yosemite and see the most unreal, stunning view I've ever seen in my life? And the Redwoods, which is, I don't think there's a place like that on Earth. It's, I actually want to move up there. That's how much I love it.
Yeah. Truly, I mean, even thinking about them, I kind of lose my words. It's so jaw-dropping. Nothing prepares you for that.
No, it feels prehistoric. There's, I felt whenever I was there, this like primordial energy that was, like you're saying, like just untouchable with any kind of language. And you're speechless, just ancient, and being something. It's almost the way I felt too, but not the same. Have you been to Pompeii in Italy?
No, I haven't.
It's the same kind of energy where you're like, this is something way bigger than me. And the redwoods, I feel like, are even more impressive because they're natural, and those trees are just thousands of years old.
Yeah, it's so cool. Anytime I really want to get it, I just have to get out in nature. It's like an immediate readjustment.
Yep, with your shoes off. And I love that you said a barefoot, because I feel that too. There's something really special in grounding yourself to the earth and dirt. And
absolutely. What prompted you guys to move to Colorado, to get out into that kind of nature?
My dad was in medical school in Houston. My mom is from Colorado, and then my dad is from Texas, and they met in college in Texas. And my dad got a job at a practice in Denver, where all my aunts and cousins and grandparents were anyway. So I think that's where they wanted to land. Aside from, my family being in Texas, I think they wanted to be in Denver no matter what.
Was it awesome to grow up around so much family?
Oh my gosh. It was, I think about it now and seeing, because I have a 1-year-old and we're not around a lot of family here in California, which is a bummer because my mom babysat. She has 3 sisters and they all had like 3 to 4 children. And my mom babysat all of them. So on any weekend, every weekend, it was like massive cousin sleepover. And we'd have backyard Olympics and played town in the basement. The basement was a mess. Like, I feel for my mom having to clean up after us, but it was just idyllic in that sense. Yeah. We'd make little movies, and we made a movie about not doing drugs, and it was Simba and Mufasa talking about not doing drugs.
You were like, we're doing Dare meets the Lion King.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? It worked.
It worked. I love it. So that was probably your first taste of performing, right? Putting on these plays with your troupe of cousins?
Yeah, I think it was.
How did you then get into your next phases of it? Did you start doing theater in school? I mean, I know you were, highlighting the moment as a puzzle piece, but where did the beginning spark get lit?
I mean, my mom was great in that she really, we had a lot of extracurricular activities, and I think she just wanted us to try everything and see what we loved. And I was in dance at a really young age, like 3 years old, and loved that. And then somehow we found this children's theater company through a patient of my dad's. And I think my mom just kind of instinctively knew that we would love it. My sisters did it with me. And so we joined this place, and I ended up taking dance lessons there because they had dance as well. But then they did these children's theater shows that were affiliated with a major regional dinner theater in Colorado called the Country Dinner Playhouse. And it was a barn that had a buffet. I look back at pictures of it now, and it's so, I mean, I'm so nostalgic about it, but it was such a weird place to have a theater. Like, the stage was on hydraulics and would go up and down. Like, explaining it doesn't make any sense to people that weren't there, but it was this playground. And the next stage, I think, that really, solidified my love for this and my drive to make a career out of it was that foray into this theater. I felt so cool that I worked where adults worked at night, even though we were doing the shows in the morning. And then I did segue into actually doing shows at this dinner theater. I did The Sound of Music maybe 4 times and have played almost all the Von Trapp children. I think there's only one of the daughters that I didn't play. And it was this really, I almost get emotional when I talk about it, because it was the last time I really remember doing acting and performing just for the love of it and nothing else, and being so liberated in that way. That's a feeling I think I'm always going to be chasing.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's the thing no one tells you about when the thing you love to do most becomes your job. No one tells you there will be a loss in that. That there is a death in the success.
Yeah.
I wasn't really prepared for that.
No, neither was I. And I don't even know if I fully even grieved that.
Well, I don't. I haven't. I certainly haven't, because you're not allowed to. Because if you do, you're called ungrateful.
Totally.
And there is a natural sense, you referred earlier to that idea of being without shame as a child. There is a natural sense of, how dare I? A sort of shame around being sad about making it. It's a deeply conflicting reality, and I think in the last few years I've been really working on increasing my capacity to hold space for the both and. and deeply consciously in the last 2 years. It's been sort of my North Star goal in terms of mentality, at least. And that is a complex beast to hold.
It's a lot to unpack.
When you think about that, when you talk about this theater, and I don't know, it feels so sweet to me going from dance class at 3 to performing as a kid to then, being a kid, but working with grownups. And you're like, look at me, I'm doing this thing, and I know that you went to the Academy of Theater Arts and I'm hearing about the sort of expansion and the joy and the work, but I hear you also when you say there was a moment where it couldn't just be for fun anymore. It got serious. There were expectations attached. There was criticism and self-criticism, I would imagine, that came with that. Now, looking back, can you see when that started? Did you know at the time, or is it something that you've really processed more as an adult?
I think it's been something that I've processed and currently processing still after the fact. And I do think I know the moment it happened. And surprisingly, it wasn't ever working at this theater. And I was employed there at certain points when I was doing the shows with the adults, but it never felt like a job. I think the moment where it started feeling that was I had done like a few small things on TV, but then I got a job on Glee in the 4th season. And I think that was when it started to shift. And it wasn't just, working the longer hours. I was so naive and so excited that I was actually making a living doing this. But yeah, I think the disillusionment for me has been a really slow process. I think that was the impetus, but it's been a more gradual descent into, oh my gosh, I'm burned out. And you know what? I think it also is interesting because that I had the upbringing and training that I did really in the theater world and in the specific theater that I worked in, because it was work hard, you do your best, you show up no matter what, you say the lines that are on the page, what's written right there for you, that's what you do. And you don't complain. And you go on stage when you're sick, when you have a fever of 104, or you're
that's
vomiting.
A prep for TV.
Right? And I loved it back then because I loved the notion of the show must go on, and I was such a theater nerd. But as an adult, and when it's on a television set, it just hit different. And when there was, maybe it's the money involved, or I don't know what it is, just the industry on a bigger scale than what I was used to as a kid.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm still like unpacking that, and I think I'm in a similar place as you too in the last 2 years of really examining what it all means to me and allowing the space to acknowledge the parts that I miss and the parts of my job that I am frustrated by, while still like having the blanket of gratitude underneath and over and around. Sometimes that feels like an impossible task.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to hold opposite feelings simultaneously, and it's incredible to make work that you love and that you care about. And it's complicated to be in a group of people that you really enjoy being around and also understand that you're not allowed to be human and that everyone will be really nice until there's a problem.
Yeah.
And then is the niceness real, or is it partially real, or is it's a lot, it's confusing. And I think, it's exacerbated and deeply magnified in our industry, certainly, because people are the commodities.
Yeah.
But I do think it is something that we're coming to a reckoning with in so many corporate environments.
Yeah.
Where people are really struggling to figure out, what is this place? Is it work? Is it community? Is it both? Is it neither? There's a lot of questions, I think, being asked about where we find ourselves and how these systems work. And it is confusing in ours, for me in particular. There's this idea out in the world that actors are these coddled people.
Yeah.
These like coddled, fragile people. And I'm like, I got yanked out of the hospital, literally out of a hospital bed with meningitis and forced to come to work. I was so sick, I thought I was going to die.
I believe it.
And my employers didn't care, and they brought me to work.
Yeah. I've been in similar situations. I worked for a month knowing I had E. coli that I got from catering. And everyone was aware. But listen, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars if you don't show up to work. That's it. And that's something that I'm not afraid to say makes me really angry. And I'm glad. I hope that things and conversations are had about work environments and the way that a film set runs. But it's interesting. I actually really resonated with you saying that people are commodities. And I do think, and that is something that was a part of my disillusionment to only doing this for the love of it. Because I don't like that feeling. I don't like feeling like a commodity. And I don't know anyone who does.
No.
Really. It's a really strange, uncomfortable thing, especially when you get into being a performer for the right reasons, you know. And that relationship, I struggle so much with the dichotomy of, and the relationship between art as a commodity and the business of it with just pure art that you're trying to express. And I don't know if they work well together. Sometimes I guess there's lightning in a bottle, but I don't know how well those two things mesh.
Yeah, it's tricky because sometimes you go, there it is. The thing that came to mind right when you said lightning in a bottle was the Silver Linings Playbook.
Oh, totally.
Watching that movie, whatever year that came out, I just thought, that's it. That's the thing. That's the magic right there. And I do love what we do. I love telling stories. I love it. And, you know, I don't know that I would love it if I was standing doing monologues on a corner. That would be weird. But I think that part of the reason I've tried to figure out other avenues for this feeling, that's even how this podcast came to be, was a desire to dig in a way that could be free, spontaneous. There could be no rules and no time boundaries. We could speak for 58 minutes or 3 hours and 15 minutes. We can just be, because everything is so regimented, so scheduled, so show up no matter what, you know.
Yeah.
I've missed weddings and funerals and things, and I love my job, and it's hard. Yeah. It's all the things, you know. It's the adage, it's the best of times and the worst of times, and everything else that goes along with it. And I don't know. I do think I am becoming okay with being willing to sit in the confusion of it and the love of it and be honest about not just the shiny parts. Yes.
Well, I think like uncovering that and shining the lights on the not so shiny parts, like finding that flashlight and digging in and really illuminating what doesn't feel good about it is so important too. And I'm in the process now. I just finished this show that took a 6-year chunk out of my life. And I know you've been there. And that's a crazy feeling to walk away. And while whatever that 6 years entailed, for me personally, it never felt definitive of who I was or my abilities as a performer. But it defined a massive, massive chunk of my life and almost like my coming of age. And illuminating the parts that I didn't like and acknowledging that is now, I feel so empowering to know how to take the next steps forward. Yeah. Or at least intuit what the next steps should feel like. Yeah. And what works for me and what doesn't. And that's really unfamiliar territory for me because I'm someone who thrives when I'm given direction, and I like that. I like guidance a lot of times, and my theater background, just doing what's on the page, and I'm there to work, and I'm used to being a workhorse. And for 6 years, I was, you know, I was the number one on a call sheet for a very rigorous show. And I think I now am just getting used to the idea that I don't have to exist at pure burnout all the time. And unpacking like what that did to my body and my stress and my heart and my mind, and being able to see family and friends, which I just didn't for years.
It's so hard.
It's so hard, but it's so good to see that that's not what I need or want or deserve. And I do have hope that, you know, you like what you're doing, you're creating what you know works for you and fills that void of what you want to express.
Yeah, I think just to find other avenues, you know, when you talk about 6 years, what that defined for you. I worked on my first show in Wilmington for 9 seasons. And what a gift to be employed through the writer's strike and through, you know, things that were so hard for people in our industry. But also, again, in the both and, it was difficult because then everyone looks at you as something rather than as who you are. And no one wants to hear that it was really hard to not see your friends or family for nearly a decade. And that working 17 hours a day can destroy your body.
Yeah.
You know, I've definitely found, I've had to get a little honest with myself about, I got so used to working to burnout that I don't know how to do anything else.
Yeah.
So
I'm the same way.
I have had to kind of have this reckoning with myself, which is, I push myself to burnout. Even when I'm not, quote unquote, on set that way, it's, I am an insatiable worker.
Yeah.
And now
Me
I'm
too.
trying to figure out, what do I do on the days when I don't have to work 16 hours a day? Why am I still doing this? But I'm so used to that level of productivity that I think subconsciously I don't realize that it is unsustainable if I want to live as long as I want to live and do the things I want to do. And I'm really trying to look back at that programming. And so when you say what it felt like, you know, to begin, you know, the quote unquote big break, joining Glee, especially because you joined in season 4, it was a massive, you know, juggernaut award-winning show. And I imagine as a young person in this industry, all you wanted to do was be good on that set. How old were you when that happened?
22. Yeah. That's all I wanted, was to not rock the boat. It was so established. They were really, they had their routine and their rhythm. I wanted just to be the good girl and the good sport, even when things were unfair. And I've actually had sort of a reckoning in the last year or so, and maybe it's just time and distance from it. But also there have since been a lot of tragedies related to that show. And I remember that time in my life as being so unhappy, so unhappy. And I wonder now, knowing what I know now and being more comfortable with who I am, I do think a lot of my unhappiness was insecurity because, like you said, I was joining the show that was so established in this juggernaut and already in the zeitgeist and had won awards. I was so insecure and naive and being disillusioned in that sense and seeing things that I'd not seen before and seeing behavior I hadn't seen before, and from people that, you know, were professionals that I looked up to. And then I wish I could go back, knowing what I know now, and just ask everyone how they were doing. Because I know I wasn't the only unhappy one. And I don't know if it was as bad a place as my memories tell me it was. And I think that's one of the hardest parts of being that young. And I know I was not even nearly as young as, how old were you when you started?
21.
Yeah. But I think that's the difficult part of starting on TV shows, specifically when in your early 20s and throughout your 20s, because everyone's 20s are hard.
Yeah.
And then you add this equation of being introduced and sometimes thrown into this business and experiencing fame for the first time and seeing how that affects people and what it does. And
well, and everyone has this idea that it's going to be great. No one's honest that it's actually a bit traumatizing.
Yeah.
No one wants to say that, which I find really weird because I feel like we're setting people up for failure. And it is such a complex bag. I agree with you. You know, my girlfriends from One Tree Hill and I have talked about that a lot. We all were on a FaceTime, and myself and Joy and Hillary, and Joy just started crying and said, "I'm just so mad. I feel like we got robbed of each other." Because we were little girls who, you know, worked for a very dark, manipulative person who didn't want us to be friends. And we didn't have the tools at 21. What 21-year-old thinks they're being manipulated by their 44-year-old married boss?
Yeah.
You know, we didn't know. And likewise, I wish I could go back with the tools I have now and kind of weed whack through what he was planting and do it differently. We all do. You know, I'm so grateful that we've returned and rediscovered each other, and just as you say, there were really bad times, but there were also days that were just great.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you had that too. Sometimes you look around and you go, this is the best day. And then you wonder, why can't every day be like this day?
Yeah.
And you never know what's coming. And I can say this, you know, not to speak for you, but you've been open about this, and I've shared some of my own experiences with this. So I hope that the analogy doesn't sound trite, but those kinds of environments are a bit like being in abusive relationships.
Absolutely.
You never know what you're going to get. So you're in high fight or flight, risk, anxiety all of the time.
All the time.
And it can have such hard effects on a body and on a mind. And I also think the early aughts were really like a breeding ground for that kind of destructive treatment of young women. You know?
Absolutely.
We're looking at it now, you know, acknowledging what the media did and people did and the internet did and blogs and commenters and, you know, the first wave of what were then, you know, the current Instagram comments, what that did to Britney Spears, but it did that to everyone.
Yeah.
You know, in varying degrees. And it's a wild thing to look at. And I really remember, because Glee didn't come on too long after our show did, I don't think. It's all a bit of a blur to me. But I remember thinking, wow, I really feel for those kids. That looks really intense. And I think about it for you, because you're still a kid when you're 21 or 22. Everyone acts like you're a grown-up. But looking back, I realized I was still just a little girl. Yep. I look at myself on the first season of that show, and I'm not surprised I got cast to play a teenager. I look like a little girl, you know? And I think about that, stepping into that for you at such a young age. And as a person that you are, having also been open about the fact that you've struggled with anxiety. Hi, me too. You know, you've talked about really coming to terms with the fact that anxiety and depression and those things began for you in your early teen years.
Yeah.
So I wonder, is that something you're conscious of now, or did you have an awareness of it then so that you could begin to build a toolkit to deal with it?
I definitely had an awareness of it then, and it came from my parents' divorce, and I was very keenly aware of that. I took it really hard, and it was really messy. My family is kind of crumbling, and I was 13, which, you know, I guess I was a little more unscathed than my younger sister, who was 8 years old, and that is such a formative time. But 13 still, I mean, I was in the thick of puberty, and I was like full-blown Pen 15. I don't know if you watched that show, but that was
that show.
me.
Yep. I was like, oh, I feel so seen by this.
Me too. Sometimes it makes me cry.
Me too.
I'm like, oh my God, that's how I felt when I got my first thong. But I was so just in the most awkward time of my awkward years. And their divorce was not, like I said, it wasn't clean and it was not pretty. And I knew my mom was also very aware. And I was lucky to be in a family that my grandparents, even my grandma worked in psychiatry, and everyone was just, you can tell us how you feel and it's okay to not be okay. I wouldn't go so far as to say like that they would advocate like just telling everyone, which I wish more of us did when we weren't feeling okay. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, trying to get people to be more open about.
Yeah.
But I did have this safety net that my mom got me into therapy the second it happened. And I know that's a pretty common thing to do, and everyone recommends it when a family is in the middle of a divorce, but I really took to it. And I knew I think my therapist at the time, she gave me the toolkit to understand when I was depressed, understand when I was having anxiety or when I was having a panic attack, even if I didn't know how to handle it, which I'm 33 and sometimes I still don't know how to deal with it. But just the awareness, yeah, I do feel very lucky that I got the awareness so early.
That's incredible. Do you feel like that helped you understand, again, not necessarily that you knew how to deal with it, but understand the intensity of that first experience, that first regular working gig on a show as big as Glee? Were you able to, in that space, say, I know what's happening in my body right now?
Yes and no, oddly enough. I didn't know how to separate. And I feel the same way as you. When I look back on that time too, it feels like a blur. I don't know if I knew yet how to separate the work of it all and what it was doing to me personally. And I don't even know how to describe that.
I understand that though, because look, as you're saying, it's common, perhaps more now than it was then, 20 years ago, but we understand that a divorce is hard on a kid.
Yeah.
We don't understand that getting on a hit TV show can be incredibly volatile for a person's understanding of their place in the world, expectations. It's a good thing. So you're not allowed to say, I'm struggling.
Right. And yes, I think that's the kernel of it for sure for me. I didn't want to admit that I was living my dream.
Yeah.
It's what I'd always wanted.
No one tells you your dreams can be complicated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you think too that from the outside looking in, the intense success of that show and also what appeared to be the intensity of producing it, the singing and the recordings and the dance rehearsals and the choreography, I mean, you went through 5 rounds of auditions to even get on the show. Is that right?
Yeah.
I mean, what was that process like for you?
It was exciting. And I think a part of me, and this is something I still struggle with too, is a part of me always believes that it's not going to be me. So I think I was comforted in that feeling like, wow, this is crazy. They want to see me again. That's amazing, but I'm not going to get it. And it wasn't until my last audition that was actually on the stages that they shot the show on the auditorium stage in the choir room. They had me singing for Ryan Murphy in the choir room. That was the moment where I was like, oh, maybe this is happening. And that's something of like a flaw of mine that I really want to work on. Is I think that ties the fact that I didn't believe I was going to get it, and then I did, and I was like, oh my gosh, working in a week. I'm on set in 2 days. That's crazy. Is this idea that I sometimes allow life to happen to me and then process it after it's happened. And it's gotten me into some really sticky situations, especially in this business we work in. And I'm working on that still.
Me too.
I
think there's a natural tendency toward that for folks like us, because there's that adage, it's not real till you sign. It's not real till your first day on set. There's a lot of don't get excited, don't let it in, don't feel anything, don't, put all your eggs in one basket. So you get very used to holding your own joy at arm's length.
Yep.
It's such a weird thing, but you were talking about your family, and